Hello, everyone. Welcome to This Week in Politics. Well, as I wrote in the intro, we took a couple of weeks off. I mean, when you do anything a lot, every once in a while you need to step back and gain perspective and try to avoid burnout, which is where I was headed. And I did gain perspective, and I did see things a little better. And I could do a long segment today, but I don't think I'm going to. But I do want to cover some major stories. Now, as you know, my ongoing issue with Google and Facebook and Twitter. So whenever I write the intros, I have to speak in limited code and hope that their algorithms do not pick up on it. The first story we titled was Justice. That was talking about our newest member of the Supreme Court, Justice Kavanaugh. And I'm going to rehash a little bit of it just for the sake of posterity. Justice Kavanaugh is a strict constitutionalist, which is, as a conservative, I couldn't ask for a better pick. This guy was squeaky clean. And just like everything else Donald Trump has done in his presidency, he has a knack for exposing the left for who they are, and it was never more evident than it was in this. I mean, okay, so they had a woman come forward and claim that he did some nasty things to her back in high school 35 years ago. And she had no corroboration. She had no details. The people that she said was there wouldn't even back her up. Even her best friend didn't back her up. She couldn't remember where the house was. She couldn't remember how many people were there. She couldn't remember how she got there. She couldn't remember how she got home. She couldn't remember if she told anybody. She couldn't remember if she told her mom and dad, and she couldn't remember why she didn't go to the cops. But somehow we're supposed to believe that the one thing she does remember, or the two things that she does remember, is that she had one beer and that Kavanaugh and two or three of his buddies molested her in her bedroom. Now, it's as obvious as the nose on your face that didn't happen, but the Republicans that were in control of the committee went through and allowed her to present her case, allowed him to rebut, and then when it was still obvious, then the Democrats yelled and screamed and insisted on an FBI investigation. He's already undergone 6 FBI investigations. This would be number 7. The committee allowed it. Now, here I have to admit I was wrong. I thought that was a mistake to allow them to postpone the election, because their whole game was to postpone until after the midterm elections, and then hopefully they would take the Senate back, and then they would be able to get him out of there. That was their game. And I felt like the Republicans were playing right into that. However, they allowed 1 week for the FBI to do yet another investigation, number 7. They did it. They got the report back on a Thursday. They presented it to the committee on Thursday. The committee met on Friday, talked about it, voted, and he became the nominee. Now, they televised that election on Friday. And throughout the whole thing, I mean, the first week of the meeting, they arrested, I think there were 70 some people that were allowed into the gallery. Now, you're only allowed into that gallery by invitation, and all of these people were invited in by Democrats, and they all caused loud disruptions, trying to disrupt so they would have to postpone. There was over 70 arrested, many more put out. Then when it came election time, They were yelling and screaming and physically clawing at the doors in the hallways. Uh, these rioters were accosting Republican senators um, in the hallway, in the men's room, in the elevator. I just saw a video the other night where um, Mitch McConnell, the leader for the Senate, was harassed for the third time in a public restaurant. And when I say harassed, I mean there was 10, 15 people chasing him, yelling all kind of nasty slurs. And I want you to think about this. This is the third most powerful man in the free world being harassed out of a restaurant for his job. The following Monday, after his election, Donald Trump held a swearing in ceremony in the White House and apologized for the poor behavior of the Democrats throughout the whole thing. It was an abomination. Um, Now, as I look back on it, I want to clarify a few things. The people that were doing all this demonstrating and yelling and screaming and beating and clawing and harassing, these are not demonstrations. These are rioters, and we need to understand the difference. These were people that were rioting, and they were paid for. We have it on film that they were paid for, and we're 90% sure it was George Soros. If he's paying rioters to disrupt the federal government, that is a felony. Okay. Another thing I would like to draw attention to, just like they did to that senator down in Alabama, and I can't remember his name. Um, when those women all came forward, everything they said was lies. They ruined that man's career in Alabama. And you know what? As soon as he was defeated, it all evaporated. They disappeared. They went back into the woodwork. His career is over and nothing happens to the women. That I think is wrong. Now, that was on a state level. What they did to Kavanaugh was on a national level. And here's what I think ought to happen. I think that the three women who came forward all need to be investigated, detailed by the FBI. And if they can't find one bit of proof about what these women said, they need to go to jail. We need to stop these women coming forward, making false allegations, ruining people's careers, ruining their promotion, ruining their livelihood. And then when it's all done, just disappearing and going on with life like it never happened. Now, the first woman that came forward, she had a GoFundMe account with almost $1 million in it. So when she walks away, she disappears. Nobody will ever hear from her again unless they want to canonize her. And she walks away with close to $1 million. That's wrong. She's being rewarded for ruining somebody's, almost succeeding in ruining somebody's career. That is wrong. I'm going to go over an ad that relates to this in just a minute. And in there, Eric Holder says some really incredible things. Eric Holder was the Attorney General under Obama. Now, the Democrats are still not giving up on getting rid of Kavanaugh. And the reason is what the conservatives have been complaining about for 30 years. The left-leaning Supreme Court has been legislating from the bench as far back as Roe v. Wade. Now, the only loophole they had back in the 70s was we didn't have medical proof of when life began. We do now. We now know it's murder. They acknowledged back then that it was murder if that's when life started. So the left is scared to death that somebody's going to take abortion to the Supreme Court and it will be overturned. And if it gets there, it should be overturned. And that's the reason they are so upset. So they have a couple of plans of attack. First, they want to impeach Kavanaugh. That's only been attempted one time back in the 1800s, and I'm not sure if it was successful or not. They have no grounds, so impeachment would not be possible. And even if it were, they'll never get the number of votes in the Senate to get it done unless the Democrats run the table. And even then, they won't have the supermajority needed for impeachment. Their second course of action is to stuff the Supreme Court. FDR tried this back in the 30s to get more left-leaning judges on there, and it was overturned, and he was not able to do that. By stuff the court, it means increase it from 9 justices to, say, 15. So that, and everyone that you put on there is ultra left wing. That's called stuffing the court. It's been attempted, but it has not been done. They did increase the court 2 votes at one time. There was originally 7, I believe, and they did increase it to 9, but that wasn't to stuff the court. So now the world sees the Democrats for who they are. Because of this, we see that they have no plan. They have no course of action. They have nothing to offer our country except nastiness and vitriol. That's all they have. They have nothing. I mean, if you have functional zero unemployment, there's more jobs available than there are people to work. That is zero unemployment. And you have a stock market that has gained $11 trillion in wealth. You have businesses expanding. You have record profits from businesses. You have trillions of dollars being repatriated back to the United States from overseas. And our foreign policy is going gangbusters. There's new deals being made for trade. I mean, they have nothing. There is no issue. The only thing that they've tried in the last 2 years that got any legs at all, and that was only because it was a lie, was the separation of families at the border, to which the press ignored the fact that it was started under the Obama administration. And it makes perfect sense, and that Trump issued an executive order to stop it. They ignore all of those facts. So, and there's a story we're going to talk about later called Caravan. So, but that's the only prayer they even possibly have. The whole world has seen the Democrats willing to play dirty to, as I have said for years, scorched earth policy. They care nothing about people. They care nothing about ideas. They care nothing about our Constitution. They care nothing about fairness. They care nothing about anything except raw power. God help us if they ever get it. This country will return back to where it was within 6 months if the Democrats ever gain that power back. That is why Donald Trump is doing 2, 3, or 4 rallies per week around the country trying to turn the tide on some of these close races so that the Republicans will retain control. And when we talk about the elections when we get there, we're going to see that I believe it's paying off. Now, this article that I want to talk about, I got from the Wall Street Journal on October 16th from the op-ed page. It's written by David Rivkin and Lee Casey. And these two guys practice appellate and constitutional law in Washington. They served in the White House Counsel's Office and Justice Department under Presidents Reagan and George H.W. Bush. So these guys know a little bit about what they're going to be speaking about. Now, I want to read the first paragraph of this to let you know where this article is at. Brett Kavanaugh's appointment to the Supreme Court has sparked a firestorm of outrage and recrimination on the left. Some attacks seem aimed at intimidating the justices into supporting progressive causes. The court must now prove through its work that it is worthy of the nation's trust, said Eric Holder, President Obama's Attorney General, tweeted October 6th. Yet the attacks go beyond ideology. Directors of Justice Kavanaugh and President Trump are denouncing the Constitution itself and the core elements of America's governmental structure. Now, this article is going to go on and show how the Democrats have abandoned the Constitution, and that's the headline. Democrats abandoned the Constitution, and they have. And it wasn't just this first time. This is just the time when it came to the fore. And the first one is the Electoral College. Mr. Trump's opponents claim he is an illegitimate president because Hillary Clinton won the popular vote. One commentator even asked, what kind of nation allows the loser of a national election to become president? The complaint that the Electoral College is undemocratic is nothing new. The framers designed it that way. They created a Republican form of government, not a pure democracy. And here's why. If it was based solely on the popular vote, and I wanted to run for president, I would go to 3 states: California, New York, and Florida, because those 3 states will carry enough popular vote that I could ignore the rest of the union, and maybe Texas. That's all I would need. 4 states tops. Now, that having that been said, that would mean that those 4 states would control everything in this country. We have 50 states. That means 50 or 46 states would be ignored. They wouldn't care what we wanted. They wouldn't care what we did. They wouldn't care a hoot in hell about us at all. All they would care about is those 4 states. Our forefathers were smart. By setting up the Electoral College, you avoid that happening. Now, let's look at the popular vote that Hillary claims to have gotten. We know for a fact in the last election that in the state of North Carolina, in the state of North Carolina, they went through and they looked at the voting rolls. We know for a fact that there was 100,000 minimum illegal votes cast in the presidential election. That's in one state, 100,000. If you take that times 50, you get 5 million votes illegally cast. Hillary claims to have won by 3 million. Now, the majority of her votes came from California. What do we know about the voters in California? Number one, illegals are permitted to vote out there. Illegals, 9 times out of 10, vote Democratic. Therefore, it is safe to assume that if we went through the voter rolls in California and we applied the rule of law, we would find, in my opinion, a minimum of 3 million votes cast in California that were illegal. I don't think there's any question at all about that. Would you like this country run based on illegals voting? That is what would have happened had Hillary won. Our forefathers were smart to bring up the Electoral College, and that's how the president is elected, not by purely popular vote. History has shown that when you have a strict democracy, that ultimately leads to authoritative. Because think about it. If those 4 states could control in every election, the same people won. And if they were happy with that, they could easily change the Constitution and get rid of the 2-term limit on the president. We could have a president for life. We could have had Obama until he died. Think about that. Our forefathers avoided all of that by giving us the Electoral College. The Democrats don't like it because they control 3 of those states off and on. And when Florida went to Trump, as in normal elections, they would have carried Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, Minnesota. They would have won easily. The amount of illegal voting going on in those states, I'm sure, is astronomical. That's why they tend to carry those states. So now let's go on. So the left hates the Electoral College. The next is the Senate. The complaint here is that the 50 senators who voted for Justice Kavanaugh in his favor represented fewer people than 48 who voted against him. But senators represent states, not people. Equal Senate representation for the states was a key part of the Connecticut Compromise, along with House seats apportioned by population. See, our forefathers were very, very smart. They did it with the population, that was the House, and by state, that was the Senate, so that both had an input. The compromise persuaded large and small states alike to accept the new Constitution. It was so fundamental that Article 5 of the Constitution, which spells out the amendment procedure, provides that no state, without its consent, shall be deprived of its equal suffrage in the Senate. That means an amendment changing the structure of the Senate would require ratification by all 50 states. What the left is saying now is, okay, the vote was 50 to 48 in the Kavanaugh case. And again, they're using the same argument they did in the Electoral College. The 48 senators represented more of the population than the 50 who voted for him, and that's true. Because the ones that voted against him were California, New York. You see, those 2 states alone carry a majority of the population in this country. They're the largest by population outside of Texas. So they're accurate. But again, it shows the brilliance of our forefathers. The Senate was designed based on states. The House was designed based on population. You don't see him talking about the House because that's based on population. But the justices are determined by the Senate, again, for the same logical reason. You do not want the courts picked by 2 states. You want it picked by all 50 states. Because if it was just the two or three states that could pick it, again, we'd be in the same situation where 2 or 3 states could determine the judicial progress of the entire country. So that whatever the court says, all 50 states would be bound by it. It was brilliance on our forefathers' part. So they want to get rid of the Electoral College. They think the way that the Senate operates is not fair. What's the next one? Judicial independence. Commentators who disapprove of the Supreme Court's composition have urged, as one law professor put it, shrinking the power of the courts to overrun our citizens' democratic decisions. Some suggest limiting and staggering the justices' terms so that a vacancy would come up every other year, ensuring that the court follows the election returns. That could be achieved via constitutional amendment, but it would go against the framers' wisdom. As Madison wrote in the Federalist number 78, life tenure for judges is the best expedient which can be devised in any government to secure a steady, upright, and impartial administration of the laws. Some of Justice Kavanaugh's detractors have demanded that if Democrats take the House next month, they open an investigation into the sex crime allegations Senate Democrats failed to substantiate. But although Congress has wide oversight powers with respect to the executive branch, it has no such oversight authority over the judiciary. The only way the House can legitimately investigate a sitting judge is in an impeachment proceeding. Okay. Judicial independence. Now, I have to say, I think there's a shred of truth to what they say. And here's what I mean. Our framers originally did not intend for the Supreme Court to have the ultimate authority over everything in the country. The Supreme Court was designed as a third branch. One had authority over the laws being written only to determine if they were legal or illegal. As an example, Congress could pass Law A. It would go to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court would say, you can't do that. That's not legal. It would go back to the House, and the House would rewrite it, make it legal, pass it, send it to the judiciary, and they would say, yes, that's legal. That's what the Supreme Court was originally designed for. It was not meant as the final arbiter. It was meant as a third branch. So I believe that even though the court is now in our favor, I said this when Obama was there, and I've said this for years. I believe that the function of the Supreme Court needs to be redefined. I do not believe that we, the people, should have access to the Supreme Court. We should have say in electing it, and the people and the republic and all of that. But the way that the legislation flows should not be from we, the people, to the legislation. Let me give you an example. When I was talking about Law A, and they work it out between them, and it goes from the House to the Senate to the judiciary, back to the House to be rewritten, back to the Senate to be revoted on, and back to them to verify it, then it becomes law. If we did it that way, we would avoid a lot of cases being brought in the lower courts because it would already have been ruled on. However, going from House to Senate, and then out of the rule, now everybody has a free-for-all. I think that needs to be relooked at. But that's just my opinion. But anyway, the left is upset because they think the Supreme Court has too much power. They didn't seem to think that when they were passing Roe v. Wade or homosexual marriage or any of those social issues that just irritated the fire out of us conservatives. Then they thought it was just fine. But now that the shoe's on the other foot, now they're going to cry foul. There's one thing the left could do to make the Supreme Court more liberal without amending the Constitution. Some have suggested return to Franklin Delano Roosevelt's court packing plan, which sought to expand the court to as many as 15 justices. Nothing in the Constitution prevents Congress from expanding the Supreme Court's membership. Article 3 merely establishes the Supreme Court. It does not say how many justices it should have. Congress has altered the number of justices by statute several times, most recently in the Circuit Judges Act of 1869, which expanded the court from 7 members to 9. But this would require a president and a House and a Senate majorities willing to go down this path, likely at considerable political cost. In other words, progressives would have to win elections, and if they did that, they'd be able to change the court without making it bigger. There you go. Chicken and egg. The anger and disappointment of Justice Kavanaugh's opponents is understandable, as would that be of his supporters if the vote had gone the other way. They are perfectly entitled to pursue political remedies, including use his appointment as a campaign issue. They also are entitled to pursue amendments to the Constitution that would make our system of government more responsive to the popular will. What they cannot do is overturn the Connecticut Compromise guaranteeing each state equal representation in the Senate, or launching unconstitutional investigations or impeachment of a sitting Supreme Court justice. The Constitution protects all of us, even Supreme Court justices. Amen to that. Amen to that. Now, I think that's about all I got to say about the Justice Kavanaugh selection and election. Now I want to take a look at the Kavanaugh election as it has affected the elections. Now, starting right after Trump was elected, the left started talking about a blue wave. And what they meant by that was the American people were so upset that Trump was president that they were going to go back and elect all Democrats, and Democrats were going to take the House and the Senate. That's what the blue wave meant. I thought they were wrong. I still think they were wrong, but the polls, and polls usually don't mean much to me, but about 6 months ago when they were doing the generic poll, it looked like that might happen. And they tightened up a little bit. It was nip and tuck, and then the Kavanaugh thing happened. And I got to tell you, just like I said, Trump has a way of exposing people for who they are and what they are. And the American people, the average Joe who does not really pay attention to politics, they got to see the Democrats in action on the Kavanaugh thing. And it upset and turned most of our stomachs, the way that man was treated. They went after his kids. They went after his wife. They went after him. They went after his friends. It was a mockery, and the American people saw it on display every day on TV. Now, what that did is it took a lot of the moderate Republicans and a lot of independents, and said, you know what? If that's what the Democrats are all about, I don't want that. I don't like that. That's not how Americans are. We're not nasty like that. Yeah, we want to play tough, but we want to play fair. We don't want to cheat. We don't want to pay rioters. We don't want to tear up the system. We don't want to ignore the Constitution. We have no problem playing rough. Donald Trump plays rough. I have no problem at all with that. But Donald Trump does not get down and like Eric Holder said the other day. Michelle Obama said, when they go low, we go high. Eric Holder said, when they go low, we kick them, meaning conservatives. Really? And Americans see that. Now, I have been paying attention, and I have taken a look at some of the races. And not only do I think we're going to hold the Senate, I think there's a chance that we're going to get as many as 7 or 8 additional seats. The race in Nevada is turning Republican. I think that one's just about done with. Arizona's going to be tight, but I believe we'll pull that one out. Tennessee, she's pulling away. I don't think there's any way he's going to pull that out. North Dakota, I can't believe they had a Democrat up there to begin with. That is a Republican state. That Senate race will go Republican. Montana, again, Republican state, strong Trump territory. That race will go Republican. Missouri, Claire McCaskill. I happen to know a little bit about this race. The only reason she got that seat is because her husband had that seat in the first place, and he died while in office. And she was appointed, and she has won maybe 2 terms there. And this one was nip and tuck, but she voted against Kavanaugh. Now, Missouri is one of those states that can go either way, Republican or Democrat. They're kind of a fair weather state. They're not Republican, they're not Democrat. I believe down there that's going to depend mainly on turnout in St. Louis proper and in Kansas City. If they come out in droves, McCaskill will carry that. If it's normal to a little above normal, I believe the Republican will pull that out. That's one I'm not sure about. But West Virginia and Indiana, again, Indiana is a strong Republican state. That's where Pence is from. How they got a liberal Democrat in there is beyond me. They will return to the fold, and that will turn Republican without question. So I believe As we go into the election, we have 51 seats. I believe when it's all said and done, we will have 56, 57, or 58 seats, depending on a couple of the fair weather ones. I think the ones to watch will be Missouri, um, Arizona, West Virginia. Those three. If all three of those break Republican, we could have as many as 58, in my opinion. So we're going to take a look at that. Now, Trump is, as I said earlier, Trump is out doing rallies, 2, 3, 4 of them in a week for congressional seats because he does not want the House to turn. The Senate, I believe he's got pretty much, he believes that'll hold, but he's stumping right now for the House um, because we have a lot more House members up for election than the Democrats do. And it is highly possible they could pull the House out. So what everybody is asking voters to do is vote straight Republican. Don't pick and choose. Straight Republican. Give Trump the votes. And here's why. If we hold the House, we can get funding for the border wall. That will happen. The reason that we haven't been able to get it done, getting it through the House now is no problem. It's getting it through the Senate because bitch McConnell will not use the nuclear option, which is just as frustrating as it could be. If we can get 58 votes, 56, 57, 58 votes in the Senate, and the House passes the bill, it'll pass. Trump says if he gets the money, he can have that wall built in a year. And I believe that to be true. So vote straight Republican. We've got to hold the House and build the Senate. That's the goal. Hold the House, build the Senate. So that's my take on how the elections look. Now, in the thing I said, comedy on the road. When I saw this article in the paper, I laughed out loud. I'm still laughing out loud. Bill and Hillary are taking their act on the road. And they're trying to sell tickets to go to these things from $75 to $750 a pop. Now, let me tell you what's really going on here. First off, they're trying to make money. Okay. Secondly, Hillary is running again for president. She's not saying that, of course, but that's what this is all about. Now, here's why I laughed. When she was running for president and she would hold a rally of any type, it was free. If you wanted to go see Hillary, all you had to do was go there and see her. She couldn't draw 300 people. And she thinks that she's going to go into a place and fill it up like Trump and have people pay to go see her. I don't think so. She couldn't draw a crowd. Now, they might go to see Bill for free. They're not going to pay to go see Bill. And if they do, here's what I would do if I were in the Republican Party. I mean, I am, but if I was somebody who had money and power, I would take a camera and I would video the crowd that they're drawing. And then I would put that side by side with the crowd that Trump is drawing. I read the other day at one of his rallies, I can't remember which one. I think it was Arizona. They had 93,000 people show up for a 10,000 seat auditorium. They showed the line, it went for miles. 93,000 people to see the president. And Bill and Hillary think people are going to pay to go see them. They are still living in la la land. They have no clue. They are absolutely clueless about why she lost and how little the American people care about her. Even the Democrats wish that she would shut her mouth and go away. And I think the first time they try to sell tickets for the first thing and they see how weak demand is, I don't think it's even going to get off the ground. If she drew less than 10,000 people, I would be embarrassed. Even if it was for free. If she drew less than 10,000 people, I would be embarrassed because the president is drawing tens of thousands of people 2 and 3 times a week all around the country. Now, the last story I want to talk about is the one I called Caravan. Now, I don't know how stupid Americans are, but if they believe that these are refugees coming up from Central and South America because they want amnesty, they are pretty stupid because that's not what's happening here. There are about 4,000 people joined together in a caravan walking to the U.S. border to be here before Election Day. The purpose of this is to put Donald Trump on the spot and in a last minute effort show him to be weak at the border and have that to be an election day surprise. Now, as I said earlier, the only thing the Democrats had that had any legs was separating the families. Trump's already taken care of that. So, Trump responded by telling these countries, Nicaragua, um, Mexico, Venezuela, that if you don't stop these people from coming up into our country, we are going to stop our aid for you. You'll get no more money from us. So the Mexicans went down there and they tried. They tried to shut the border, but they overran them. Now, the Mexicans, in their mind, they tried. They were going to let small groups of them at a time through, and the people just overran them. The Mexicans were not willing to shoot to kill to stop this crowd. They had 3 or 4,000 people overrunning them, daring them to shoot. Now, a couple of observations. I've seen video of these people coming. There's not one of them in there that looks like a refugee. They're wearing Levi jeans and Nike tennis shoes and Hawaiian shirts, and they've all got $25 haircuts, and they're clean. None of them are dirty. None of them look beat up. None of them look malnourished. Um, and the majority of them are men. Now, what do you think? Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's bring it to you. If you wanted to walk from here to Texas, how long would it take for you to get 3,000 people together to walk with you? I would be willing to bet that you could advertise nationwide for a week and not get 3,000 people. Okay? So what if you then said, I will pay each person $1,000 that comes to me to walk to Texas? Now you're going to get some takers. Do you think that if you just started walking, you and your family started walking, that 3,000 people would join you between here and Texas? No. So this is no grassroots caravan that's coming. These are not poor immigrants that are coming. These are paid rioters. And when I say rioters, I mean, think about that. The average person, where the authorities come to stop you, do not overrun the police. That's what rioters do. Rioters that are going to go to that much effort are being paid. Somebody is paying these people. And they are not just people, these are rioters. These people are prepared to fight. I would not be surprised if they are all armed. This is an invasion of our country. This is coming. So what Donald Trump has said, when the day he told them about cutting their money off, he also said, if you don't stop them, I'm going to call up the U.S. military and I will seal the border. They are not coming into this country. I believe that, one, Donald Trump has played into their hands because now he has forced a confrontation at the border, and that's going to happen. That's step one of what they wanted. From the Democrat standpoint, what they think is if anybody gets hurt or shot, that's going to look bad on the president. What the press doesn't understand is we as Americans want there to be people hurt and killed because as soon as that happens, people are going to stop coming across that damn border. But as long as we keep mollycoddling them, breaking the law, and not enforcing our borders, they're just going to keep coming. I want you to remember this. Any country in the world that does not have a border does not have a country. If you don't have a border, you don't have a country. Now you could geographically say, here's our border, the Rio Grande River is our border. But if you're not going to enforce it, that's not a border, that's just a line on a map. A border is something that you enforce. A border is something you defend. A border is something that defines us from our neighbor. In a subdivision, a fence is your border. If somebody keeps climbing over your damn fence and messing in your yard, you have every right to protect your yard because that fence is your border. It's the same with the country. If somebody keeps coming across our damn border, we have a right to defend that. And Donald Trump has picked up the gauntlet. Now, it's going to go one of two ways. Either he's going to back down and they're going to come in, or he's going to shoot to kill these people and there's going to be a big uproar. I hope he's prepared to go the full distance. The American people will reward that, and he will. If this happens before the election and people are killed on the border, if that happens, the Republicans will run the table because that's what the Americans want. That's why we want the wall. Now, I said this 2 years ago, and I'm going to say it again. If enforcing our border is a national emergency, when we are being invaded by 3,000 or 4,000 people, which I believe it is, and Donald Trump pulls the military out to defend our border, not the National Guard, but the national military, which I think he should, that is declaring a national emergency on that border. When that happens, why doesn't he take the money from the Pentagon, who has the money, and build that wall? Because then it's not misappropriating. Because when that happens, the president is giving almost unlimited powers to do whatever it takes to protect our border. If the president says, I'm going to use force to protect this border now, and I'm going to build the wall now to protect it for the future, he has every right to do that. And if he doesn't do that, I think that's an opportunity missed, and shame on him. But that caravan is coming, and as I understand it, they're set to be here by the end of this week. So we could know pretty quickly. Now, I don't know how Donald Trump plans on closing the entire wall or the entire border with the military unless he's going to pick strategic places where this group is going to come. But as I said, I've given this a lot of thought in the last couple of years, and here's how I think it should be done. I think the U.S. military should set up on their side of the border. Tell the Mexicans we're going to do it, but set up on their side of the border. Now, the left, being who they are, will pay for rioters to come in and harass them from the back. So, ICE should take up a rear position to protect from the rioters. So we will basically have two fronts. The military dealing with the invaders coming from Mexico on their side of the border, and ICE protecting our border from the leftist on this side. Because if they don't, the military will be harassed by the left. And these rioters will also be American, and they will do that just because they can. If they were willing to go, these rioters were willing to go to jail for the sake of money to disrupt the Senate hearing on Justice Kavanaugh, they certainly are willing to go out and harass the military from the rear to keep them distracted. And I believe that'll happen. So I would set it up that way, and I would take no prisoners. No prisoners. As soon as you see the whites of their eyes and they keep coming, you shoot. If they keep coming, you keep shooting. And if you have to shoot all 3,000 of them, you shoot all 3,000 of them. You don't let one penetrate our border, not one, not for any reason. And if they bring their kids get shot, so be it. They have made that decision to put their kids in harm's way. They have made that position to put women in front. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if that's what they did, because that's how terrorists operate. When they come as a herd like that, they put women and children in front and the men in the back. It doesn't matter. If you're coming at us to penetrate our border, man, woman, or child, you will be shot. And you need to know that. And I would not back down on that for one instant. That's what needs to happen. And I hope that's what happens. So, Mr. President, do not be intimidated. Do not be kowtowed. Do not be tricked. If they come, man, woman, or child, or baby, shoot to kill. And if they keep coming, keep killing. But do not, under any circumstances, let anyone penetrate our border. Well, that's about all I wanted to say this week. If you can see it over my shoulder, uh, we are this program and the Right Wing Reverend programs are all produced by Prayer Box Ministry, and that's our web address behind us. Go over there, check us out. All of our programs are over there. There's an oral Bible over there. There's a digital store over there. There's all kinds of stuff to do over there. Go over there and check us out, prayerboxministry.org. Well, you all have a blessed week. I look forward to next week when we can sit down and talk about this week in politics.